Hello and welcome to the SRA Specific Skills Spelling Book D. This book contains 12 units. So D represents the grade level, which is fourth grade. So the skill is fourth grade level, but that doesn't mean that your child or your student, or if this is a student themselves, this is not your level. This is some areas that might prevent you from maybe increasing your reading level, because when you're pronouncing words out, spelling has a lot to do with syllables and the phonics connection. Because often when we're trying to spell a word, I don't know if you've ever seen a spelling bee, you hear them sound the words out to try and figure out what letter's coming next, and you always use a reference point so that you use your known words. So we build from smaller words into bigger words so we can recognize the smaller words within our bigger words. So in the spelling books with the SRA program, they're going to go over the different types of strategies that you're going to be using to remember how to spell, but also to make you a better reader. And not only better reader, but if you know how to spell, a better writer ultimately. So all the dings that you get for spelling words incorrectly. I know a lot of the students that I've tutored don't like seeing, well, you spelled this wrong, and you kind of feel like well, I wasn't really thinking about that when I was doing my work. I just wanted to get the work done. You know what I mean. But at the same time, we have to be very diligent in the way that we communicate. So, no, we don't know what you mean if you're spelling words incorrectly, because the English language is one of the hardest, if not the hardest language to learn, because we have so many caveats. Silent letters when there's in other words that are spelt very similar with only one letter missing. Why are we not saying that letter? Because it would rhyme technically with this. So like doing a rhyming strategy, it might not work in some instances. So this is the introduction to this particular set of books. I have D, E, and F at the beginning, at the end of the video, I should say. There is going to be the answer key. Answer keys are really good to look at to identify for this particular program all the specific things that are being reviewed within these units. So some of the units are a little longer than others because it's going to break things down a little bit more, or not, depending on how significant it is within the language field. I want to, second of all, say any book in this program, it's a must read it's a must read in regards to the teacher and to the student section of the book at the very beginning. So the first few pages that I'm going to be clicking on to, those are the most significant. I'm going to stop at the to the student page. I'm not going to read it word for word. You can pause the video and read it on your own. I just want to show you how they're going to be introducing the work and the way you're supposed to look at that page, because some of the students that I've tutored, even though they might be older than what the book is geared towards, they have a tendency to kind of brush through things and like, oh, I already know that, and they think because they already know it, they don't have to review it. It's always a good idea to review something, because you just might think, oh, I forgot that part of it. So our memories aren't always reliable. And the second thing that's most important with these books, writing things down. Everything in this program, you should be writing everything down. Your answers are A, B, C, D. They're multiple choice questions and practice within the lessons themselves. Some of them are fill in the blanks, but I suggest that anytime you do these books, write it out. If you are going to be printing these pages out, invest in some sheet protectors, because you can put the papers inside the sheet protectors, and the sheet protectors you can use dry erase markers or the vis-a-vis markers, and just use a simple Lysol wipe or some Windex or whatever cleaning material you have, and you can clean off the surface and reuse it or revisit things or correct, since if this is a parent that's acting as teacher, you'll be able to correct things on that. But at the same time, it's fine if you're going to do it that way, but I really would think that the best practice for these books is to write things out. And they might in the direction say, use acronyms like DO for direct object. They won't in the spelling books, but I'm just using this as an example. Just make sure that if you understand what those acronyms mean. If you're writing IO and DO and over a period of time, you're like, what does that stand for again? I don't remember. That means that's a clue that part of your memory is starting to break down when it comes to that particular area. And the best thing I love about these books is there is already a built-in assessment. Every few units, there's going to be language activity pages. So everything that you've learned up until that point is going to be reviewed. So you're going to be looking at vocabulary, like terminology, getting familiar and comfortable with it. Then you're going to be, seeing it in practice. Can you apply this in the different areas? Can you identify it in a larger piece of work? So if you're given a paragraph and you're asked to edit it for spelling, for example, are you able to find those words that are missing? And I have a great spelling book that I've used. It says grade 5 on it, but I'm telling you, my high schoolers really enjoy using that book, and I'm actually going to do a video on that entire book. It is a textbook for spelling, but I'm telling you, it is a great book to use in conjunction with these books, because it really does test those skills instead of just teaching the phonetics and the way in which we organize our vowels for certain words and things like that. So I'm going to start going into the breakdown of the video way I do these. Okay, I only spend 5 to 6 seconds per page. I've noticed on some instances where I may have accidentally scanned in a page twice. So if you see more than 5 seconds on a page, that's my fault. I probably ended up scanning the page in twice and not realizing it. Because standing at a printer scanning these pages in consecutively kind of can be a little dull, so I lose track because my brain just wanders. But other than that, let's move forward. This is Spelling Book D. This is the to the student page. It's going to break down what you're going to expect from this book. So this is the outline or overview. So basically, your rhyming strategy, convention strategy, visualization, meaning, dictionary, proofreading, family strategies, foreign language strategy, because the English language is a mix of Greek, Latin roots. In some instances, we got some French mixed in there. Like I said, English is one of the more difficult languages to really grasp, even for us fluent English speakers. And we grow up with learning the language. It's very hard to express all these different foundational things that we forget about when we're in the world and we're grown up and we're working and doing other things. So, and then they're going to give you examples, and then they're going to show different variations on how they're going to teach the particular skill. So I like these because it's a great snapshot of what you're going to be looking at in here, or at least some elements of what to expect. And not only that, but it's also showing you the methodology of the teaching. So if you wanted to scale this up to a higher learning grade level or learning level, so if you have a fourth grader and they're in this book and they're just breezing through it and you want to escalate it or make it more rigorous, you can follow these strategies within the context of any book that they might be reading, or you can provide them. Don't be afraid to assign your own child homework for you to make sure that that they're understanding things. So if you see a book, I love these books because one of the other things that they do is they'll reference books that obviously are grade appropriate, or they wouldn't be mentioning it in this particular book. So there is an automatic uh, either expectation that they should know the book or be familiar with it, or the story itself. So, like fairy tales are often used because we learn about those at such a young age, and they're referenced continuously within our own literature, even up into high school. Okay, so I like that about this particular book. And of course, at the very bottom, every student, when they walk into the classroom, sees on the board the learning goal or learning and the learning objective for that day, because the teacher is required to do that. And this is a learning objective for the entire book. So this is the expectation that you are going to accomplish by doing this. If you see some gaps, you can also just Google, spelling grade 3, and maybe use some strategies that were not presented here, but are more you feel is more applicable to your particular student. Everybody has different learning style, and when it comes to the spelling books, I like to say that this book is pretty well rounded, but I do know that learning styles are important, so visualization especially. I know that there's something that you can also look up, are songs that help with spelling. I went on Teacher Pay Teachers, and they actually have songs and things that are made to help with understanding or remembering some of these spelling rules. Take the time to maybe look at some of those and see if they might be helpful. It's, if anything, singing is going to help you remember the spelling, just like the nursery rhymes, the I before E except after C, or when sounding like A is in neighbor or way. So those types of things help you to remember how to spell. So anything to make you a better speller is amazing, and it's awesome. I encourage it. And moving forward, I will be spending 5 to 6 seconds again. I will be stopping at the answer key so that I can show you the answer key, zoom in, especially for the language activity pages. If Especially for this spelling book, if there are any other strategies that are not presented here, I use this book quite often, because the one thing that when I'm asked to help with a person writing their paper or essay, they rely on Microsoft Word or Google Docs to do spell checks and things like that. Sometimes it doesn't catch them all, and sometimes, because a student may not recognize when they're creating something that's important to them, they overlook some of these smaller, finer details. It'll make a suggestion and they'll accept it instead of ignoring it. I've seen a student literally do that with everything, and then I go back and I read, I'm like, why do you have that there? Oh, I did spell check and I just hit change all. So can't always depend on your technology to really fully understand your mind and what your intentions are, because the software is not made to understand the context in which you're speaking, or not speaking, but in which you're writing. It's just it's a container that is always constantly accessing what you have and seeing if there's anything inside of that container that references that. So it still requires that human quality of, did you mean this? You have to make sure you're diligent and say, oh, do I mean that? Really question yourself. Make sure that that's the right decision. All right, and without further ado, let's move on. Oh, and this is what I like to include in some of the videos. This is the scope of the entire spelling series from level A to H. So that would be first grade all the way through to eighth grade. So if you're interested and you want to find more books, they're very hard to come by because they're only provided from the publisher. These are our textbooks, or meant to be textbooks. They're so old though, but they're still viable since the English language isn't really going to be changing anytime soon. The way we structure our speaking and writing and reading, it's all rooted in these foundational things. So that being said, I'm going to get into the answer key. Okay, so this is the answer key. It's in chronological order by unit, and obviously the page numbers are included. So you have the pagination that coincides with the particular unit. So you can see some units are longer than others. Some are a couple pages, this one's 4. But do you see the details? So this is rhyming strategy, conventions, visualization, compound word strategy. So they're telling you that unit is focusing on a particular skill. And I'm going to zoom in for the answers on the language activity pages, just so there's no blurring or unable to read the answers. And this is for the last column. Okay, so for the first, so I have the first and the second lap here, so you can have access to those with this one particular shot. Third activity answers are here, along with the last activity page. You can get that just in this one shot. Okay, so those are the answers. You can look up Casey Kite on YouTube, and you're going to have all the different books that I have in my possession. I would like to get the whole collection. I don't have usage. I thought at one point I had usage, but in tutoring, and I had a tutor room in public school, so I think that when I was using it, when I was using the books at that point in time, or maybe at the tutoring center I was working at, must have grown legs and walked. But you know what? If they're using it, I'm okay with that as long as it's being used.